Yeah, we have what's called the 4.0 club, so that if you want to study, do homework, get tutoring, free pizza. Yeah,
Got my attention.
yeah, they have free food over there if you want. So yeah, it sucks. But anyhow, welcome back, guys, to Unit 2. Today we're going to be learning about APIs, and essentially, I how was the homework for you guys this past week? It was good.
Pretty good.
Were you guys able to understand JavaScript better?
Actually, I just did half of it.
Half of it?
Yeah, because I kind of got stuck and I don't have time for doing this. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries.
I just take a look at the rest of them, but I didn't do it.
Make sure to do it. You have time. Yeah, you can catch up. But
Okay.
I just wanted to make it clear that if you're not doing it, I mean, once you go to the career fair, you're gonna look all dumb, saying like, "Oh yeah, I know web dev," and then they ask you JavaScript. You're like,
Yeah.
"Never mind." Yeah, you goofed. But anyhow, so we're on Jiffy this time. We're gonna be working on this project right here, which is a Jiffy, and it's pretty cool. You're gonna make basically essentially an API that will not make it. You're gonna use the API for memes that are already available on the internet, and you're gonna create your own searcher. So every time you type up something like, what's that meme where, what's that artist name that wears a orange jacket, and he's like,
Oh, Drake?
is it Drake? Yeah, he's like,
Drake's on,
yeah, and then he's like, yeah. Things like that, simple things. So you're gonna be working on this project this week, and it'll be really fun. But before we get you guys started into that, we're gonna introduce you to the basics of APIs. Essentially, we're gonna be working on our own API with the Pokemon API. So you guys already know the course portal. We don't have anyone new, but probably tomorrow they'll have someone new. Getting help, you guys already have our emails. Make sure to ask for help. We're available to you guys, not just Fridays. I mean, you can email us whenever, and we'll be glad to answer any questions. Attendance, here's the attendance for today. It's bit APIs, that's the code for today. It's the same link. Make sure you go to the bit.ly/shipweb and type in the code for today, which is APIs. Nice. Sal sometimes does. President? Manuel? I'm talking like Russia. Francisco. Which Francisco? Francisco Loya? Yeah. Yeah, he's still here. He was just interning in the IBM though. Co-op. Yeah. So now we're going to go over assignment 2 details. Here we're going to be working on an API, as I mentioned before, that grabs some of the famous memes, and then you're going to be able to retrieve it easily. Same as always, it's going to be due midnight by Sunday midnight, so make sure you guys complete it. Make sure you guys also really document it really well, because this is what's really going to help you out in the interviews, as well as having a really well established portfolio for recruiters to look at. So Sunday midnight, assignments are always going to be due Sunday midnights, so that you guys have time to do it over the weekend. Any questions regarding what we're going to be doing today? Thumbnails? Oh, we'll go over that. Yeah, we'll cover it anyways. Alrighty, so let me go over some of the resources again. CodePath, they're accepting currently for winter 2019, so if you guys want to learn Android or iOS next quarter, sign up now. So make sure you guys go to it and like save it, so that by tonight you'd be like, hey, your boy's gonna learn iOS, Android. If not, we also have the career fair coming up this Thursday, so make sure you guys get ready, dressed up, like my man over here. He's already dressed up as always. And the dates for the career fair are Wednesday 7 to 10 p.m., Thursday from 10 to 3 p.m. But usually go to this one. This is the one where everyone's at. Usually by this time it's like the ones that didn't get space. This is where like the main big companies go to. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call these crappy, but the companies that didn't get a reserved spot, because usually the main big boys take over the Wednesday. So make sure to go. What happened? Yeah, early, dude. Everybody wants jobs. But you can also go late after like your classes or something, or once you finish eating some good grub at the end eatery. So that's that. You can go to the link, or you can just type in on the Google search bar UCI Career Fair, and it'll prop it open. Next, we also have the job well. You guys already know about that. Industry showcase. If you guys can't make it to the career fair, then I mean, we're still gonna have our industry showcase so that you guys can go to this, which is Wednesday also, but at night. And this is where it's like more VIP, more exclusive. So it makes sense to go to both just in case, so you can talk to multiple people at the same time. All right, let's go over APIs and network requests. I'm gonna show you guys a little bit of introduction of HTTP methods. And the four most common ones that you're going to be learning throughout this course. But today we're going to be focusing on one of them, which is GET. The GET request basically reads data, right? Then you also have another ones where it's POST, which you're not going to learn yet until you build your own database, which is where you insert new data. Later on, you're going to be learning the PUT, which means updating data, and then delete. But for now, today we're only going to be focusing on GET, the GET request method. And we're going to be using that to call the API so that it can give us back the information that we want. So here's an example where we use these methods in our daily routines. For example, when we go buy something on Amazon Prime, we get the store, we get all the items, we post new items for when a new seller is selling a pet or something. We get the purchase order that we want to get, or we could also delete them in case the user decides to return. Simple example, some of the common HTTP status codes. This is basically when you're sending a signal from your client, which is your computer, to the server, and the server will respond something. It's basically like their way of communicating. 200 is saying, okay, you have access to this resource. 301 is permanent, basically saying that if I go to, let's say that I bought a new domain and it has a different name, but people only recognize the old domain. So what do? I redirect. That's when you would have a 301. Or for example, when companies decide to switch to a nonprofit and they switch their domain to .org, from .com to .org, they can use the 301. They also have the 302 temporary, which is when, let's say that Facebook went down, so they got to redirect you to another site, a backup plan. 404, the most common one that you will see when you're trying to access something or you're trying to copy someone else's homework and then you see the 404 and you can't copy the homework anymore. 500, the server error. Very unusual that it happens because if the server crashes, then you just get a proxy error or like server error. It doesn't give you the exact code. And then 503, unavailable. So that's just basically when they took down a complete site, like fully. Anyhow, no need to know those very well yet. You will need to know those later on once you start building your own database. But for now, we're going to go over a little bit of JSON. I'm pretty sure some of you are familiar with it, but we're just going to do a quick review of it. JSON is essentially a lightweight data interchange format. So what does that mean? It's a way to represent data. And the way that they do it is by having these curly brackets that represent everything. So I highlighted everything in color that represents to that item. For example, food. Food is all of this, inside all of this. Banana is type of food. And it's all yellow because this is what all it represents. Apples, you can also put arrays within JSON. And it represents there's two types of apples, right? Or many other types. So I just put two types. The yellow is not good, and the red is pretty good. And that is all pertaining to Apple right here. And then we have an avocado. Nice. So we're going to be using JSON to fetch, or in other words, get data from the internet and get all the Pokemons that exist in the Pokedex. Here's another example though, before I go into the detail. This is a book JSON. So every book is going to have title, the author, genre, detail, who is the publisher, the publication year, ISBN, language. It has a price, the hardcover, then this is the price. If it's a Kindle edition, then this is the price. You guys get the sense now of what a JSON does? All it does is just organizes your data in this format. There's another format that you can use, which is SQL tables, but pretty outdated, but people still use it a lot nowadays. So now, how do we convert this JSON data into this nice looking web dev looking page, right? So that's the main challenge that we're going to tackle today. Converting this ID, name, ID sort, Japanese, but we don't need that stuff. How do we convert this into a JSON file? Into a web development file. That's what we're going to be learning today. Let's get coding. So everybody whip out your Atom coding terminal, and we're going to start getting on some good codings right now. All right. So if you guys look at your current HTML file, you'll notice that it's just stuck on the loading icon. So there's nothing working on it. So let's go over a couple of things that we need to learn before we get into the actual fun stuff here. Let me make the code bigger too. Alrighty. So let's analyze what we have right now. Imagine that you're just coming into a new job and they give you all this whole project file, and they're like, all right, do this for me, implement the APIs so that we can see the Pokemons. And you're like, all right, I guess I'll do it. I'm down. So they give you the project, and now you're analyzing what's in the project itself. First, we have our CSS. Okay, pretty standard. We have a couple of CSS stuff here going on. How to get rid of tags, Pokemon details, how to add shadow to the cards, how to animate the Pokemon cards when hovered, get rid of another anchor tag effect, etc. Okay, pretty simple stuff. So at least we know what our classes should be named later on. We have our database. We have a folder called thumbnails. It just has basically all the images of all the Pokemons that are here. Cool. So I know what that is. And here we have an example of a Pokedex.json. So this is going to be it's going to come in handy when we're trying to figure out how are we going to detect which Pokemon is which, right? So this is, you can use it as reference when you go back. And as you can see, it's a whole array. This whole JSON is essentially an array that goes all the way down. But each item, each ID represents a Pokemon. So we have ID 1. Name is Bulbasaur, and that also gives us the type that they are, and it also gives us some cool statistics about some of their health, their attack, defense, special attack, special defense, speed, etc. So now if you guys ever played Pokemon on Game Boy, this is making me think like, holy shit, this is hella coding for just a simple game, because you gotta code it for I don't even know how many hundreds of Pokemon. Yeah, 151 Pokemon. So that's hella crazy. Imagine coding all of this single-handedly when you were trying to develop that first game of Pokemon. That took a while. But we're going to have that as reference. We don't need that for now. Now let's go into some of the index page. So if you guys look at it, we have our link to our Bootstrap, our style sheets. We have also APIs. And we also have our custom CSS file that's being linked, so that's perfect. And then we have our navigation bar, pretty simple stuff. Now here's where we're going to actually be dealing with the Pokemon cards. It's the Pokemon container right here. This is where we're actually going to be placing some of our Pokemon code. So if you go to our index, we have a couple things that we need to look at. So we need to know what is going on here. So if we go to our index, which is the main page right here, we want to fetch all the Pokemon that are available for us. So here we have a function that calls load Pokemon, and it calls another function called networks.fetch all Pokemon. And okay, so that tells me that everything should be within the networks. And yes, perfect, just 3 functions that we have to fill out. How great is that? So in order to understand what we want to do, first we have to understand, I'm going to teach you guys how to get a JSON callback from the internet. So now we're going to start typing. Get your fingers ready. We're going to call a var xobj object. And it's going to be a XML HTTP request. Cool. So you guys remember how I showed you the get, post, and then the put methods? Here we're basically creating an object that will do that request for us. Now all we have to do is tell the xobj dot override mime type application slash JSON. Cool. So now we're telling it what kind of data are we going to be retrieving from our request that we're making to the internet. We're going to get a JSON. Okay. Now we need to tell it exactly what to get. Now I'm going to tell my xobj object to open a GET request from the following URL: https api.myjson.com/bins/6v dpy. And then here I'm just going to type true. Perfect. And now I'm gonna tell xobj to get ready. And basically what this is going to do is I'm gonna have it do something when it loads the data. So on ready state, once I get my on ready state change, I'm gonna call this function, which essentially is going to call the xobj object. I'll explain to you guys exactly what it does in a minute. Equals 4 and xobj.status equals 200. Then we call back the xobj.response text. So can anybody guess what's going on here? Based on what I talked about, the status, the common HTTP codes that we went over. Sort of. So we're telling OBJ to get us an API file, a JSON file, because we tell it what kind of file is it, which is JSON, and then we tell it what we're getting. Where is this file that's JSON that you want to get located at? And I tell it that I want to get this file right here, which is a JSON file. And then here, I just tell it, alright, I want you to be ready. And the ready state basically means that it was successful. That means operation complete. You guys can read this in the documentation of XML HTTP request. You can find that online. And for the status code, we just make it equal to the 200, because that's what's going to let us know that it's okay, that the server responded and that you can access the data, right? So in other words, request has succeeded at this point. So now what we tell it to do is, what do we do with that with that response? Then we tell it, oh, if the ready state is 4, which means that the operation complete, and the server replied 200, which means okay, yeah, you can access the data. Then I want to return that text, which is going to be in the form of a JSON. So this is basically going to say the callback is essentially like a return function. Because if you guys noticed, this is a function within a function. This variable is a function. So we have to make it somewhat, we have to figure out how to return something that's within a function. And we use what's called a callback. This is how you're able to retrieve what's within a closure. A closure is basically like your lambda functions in Python. So now that we have our text, now we're going to do xobj.send. So in other words, we prepare, it's like if we're preparing imagine that you're writing a mail and you're wanting to send it to someone. First, you have to tell the the mail office, hey, I'm going to send a letter. It's going to be a letter, and I want a response from them in the format of a letter, too. So you prepare that, and then you tell it where it's going to be located. Then you tell it, okay, once they receive that letter, if they received it and they reply to me back, I want you to get me that response. Give it to me, right? Once everything is prepared, now you just send that request. You send it to the mail office, and they will perform that operation for you. Make sense for everyone? Perfect. So now that we have that request set up, let's see what actually happens when we get that request. So in this function, we're going to fetch all the Pokemon that we need into our Pokedex. So now that we have that request sent, now we need to focus on what to do with it, right? What am I going to do with all that data? Because if you guys remember, all it's going to do is it's just going to return me this crappy looking, just a bunch of text, string text. So we're going to have to do something with it. So I'm going to call it this.getJSON and function response. So you guys remember what's doing here, right? This getJSON, and if you guys notice, the getJSON takes in a parameter which is callback, which is essentially a way to return something. So in here, I'm just telling it, hey, I'm going to pass in this function response. And all it's going to do is, using that question?
Yeah, I think that's why it happens. You have to write callback, like,
Not here. No.
it just intakes.
So our getJSON takes in a variable called callback. What do you think that is? It's a function.
Oh,
So it's taking in, we're giving getJSON a function as an input. Does that make sense? So now we need to tell it, and the callback essentially just returns this. It returns the response. Yeah, sip it down for a bit. It's kind of hard to grasp the concept of giving function as an input. But okay. So essentially what I'm doing is, it's a way to return something within something that's in a function within another function. Because you can't just say return, yeah. Because you can't return something that's within a closure. It'll just return you a empty or null output. So what you do is you use what's called closures, and also this is a closure, another example of a closure, which takes in a function as a parameter, as an input, and then using that function, the response represents this right here. So the response text represents the response right here. Does that make sense so far? Later on, you'll get to touch more on closures once you build your own database, and you'll start seeing the flow. But for now, just follow along. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called actual JSON equal json.parse, and we're going to parse the response that we're going to receive. So now what do we want to do once we get the actual JSON? You guys remember this loading icon that we have? We want to stop it. So we already have a function made for that, and we're just going to call it here. And you guys can take a look at it later on during your free time to see what it does. It's pretty simple. It's like 2 lines of code. So we call our hide loading. And now, just to verify that our JSON is working, I'm going to console log our actual JSON. Cool. And now I'm going to go test it out into my Pokedex and command alt J, and we have an error. Override mind type. It's not a function. Did I type it correctly? Override mind type. Oh, I see. Make sure that you guys put capital T on the type. Override mind type. Right here. Yeah. There you go. Question. You mean Pokemon HTML? Pokemon HTML is when do you remember the GIF that I sent you guys on the email, where it shows you a prototype of it? So when I click on one of the Pokemon, it takes me to a different page where it shows me the details of it, like the stats. Yeah. So the Pokemon HTML represents the specific type of Pokemon that I selected. So if you guys console log the actual JSON, you should be getting something like this. Pretty huge. Here it is. Perfect. So it worked. We can see right now from our JSON response that we were able to receive a big chunk of data in the form of a JSON. Yeah. You guys have this right now? Where? Okay. So now that we know that our fetch all Pokemon is working, everything so far should be working. Did you find the error? Oh, yeah. You got the JSON? Should look something like this. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Perfect. So now, how do we modify all this data, put it nicely on our main index page? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to map every Pokemon into their specific card, right? So imagine that you have a basket, and then you want to place all the Charmanders, all the fire types into one basket. Essentially, that's what we're going to be doing with the map function. Here it's also a closure, so it's going to be hard to kind of understand, but bear with me. Here, we're going to let Pokemon labels equal create type labels, and it's going to take in our Pokemon.type. And if you guys remember the Pokemon.type, I'm getting that from our JSON file over here. So if you guys look in our HTML, on our callback, we have every Pokemon has a type, either grass, psychic, electric, fire, ground, earth, all that stuff. So it already knows the actual JSON. Once you print this out, it already knows what each element has. So for example, if I type Pokemon.id, it already knows that it's going to look for the ID of it. If I type the Pokemon.name, it'll give me the Pokemon name as well. So we're creating, essentially, we're going to organize the Pokemons accordingly using their type. So that way we know what kind of specialty that they are. And once we have our labels, now we're going to go through each Pokemon and create Pokemon card, then add to HTML. Cool. So how are we going to do that? Well, we created a simple function for you guys on the index.js. We already created the add Pokemon HTML, and the reason behind this is because from last week and your homework, you should already know how to add HTML, right? You guys remember all this basic stuff. But the only difference here is that we're adding a different Pokemon for each element. So how do you do that? You do that using these $ symbols enclosed with curly brackets, like this one right here. So essentially, I'm passing a parameter that's reusable. It's like a template for each Pokemon. And so what I'm doing on my other function, how do you split it in half? Your left. There we go. Nah. There we go. So what I'm doing here now is it's passing for each Pokemon on my actual map.json function. I'm passing a Pokemon for the ID. What else do we need? The name. And that's pretty much it. And I think the label as well. Or not. Nah, not really. Yeah. Cool. So now we're going to call this function the add Pokemon HTML function. Oh shoot, right beneath this comment right here. So I'm going to call add Pokemon HTML, and it's going to take in the Pokemon name, right? We need the name, ID, and the type. Cool. So I'm going to put the Pokemon name in English. You can do it in Chinese or Japanese if you want. That'll be cool. And it's also going to take in the Pokemon.id as well as the Pokemon labels that we created. Perfect. Does that make sense so far? Awesome. So now, simple stuff. It's going to add the Pokemon. It's going to add this HTML code to my index page. So now let's just refresh our index and let's see what happens. Look at that. Oof. Oh my gosh, look how beautiful that is. Did it work on you guys? Yeah. Nice, huh? I added some cool CSS so that whenever you like hover on them, the cards move a little bit. It's pretty cool. Nice and tight. Did yours work? On ready state change. Nothing. Everything is lowercase. Yeah, right here. So basically what we're doing here in our JSON function is, hello. What we're doing here is we're basically mapping each. Do you guys have a club meeting? I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you have a reserve, huh? Oh, okay. I figured. Could you guys give me a couple minutes to finish? Okay. Alright. Don't worry guys, we're almost done. We just need one more function. Yes. Yeah. 6. 6 to 7. Yeah. But we're almost done. Yeah. Oh, you're actually part of the oh, okay. Yeah, it's from 6 to 7. Yeah. But stick with us. We're still learning a lot just by listening too. So everybody was able to obtain the cards that we're getting here, right? Perfect. All right, now for the last function. Now we need to figure out how do we view this specific Pokemon, right? So like, how can we view if I click on Ivysaur, I want to see their stats. So what we're going to do now is we're going to figure out the fetch Pokemon details function. So really quick, I'm going to call again the this.getJSON function, and I'm going to take in a function that takes in a response, right? Same thing as the other. And then I'm going to create my actual JSON variable. Let me just move it up. And then from here, I'm going to make it equal to json.parse response. Hide the loading again. Pretty simple stuff as the other function. If you really look at it, they're pretty much the same. And then here, we're only going to have one Pokemon though. We're taking in one single Pokemon. So how do we retrieve that Pokemon? We call the actual JSON, and we use the Pokemon ID because if you guys recall, on our Pokedex, it's an array, right? So we just use the ID to figure out which Pokemon we clicked on. So now we retrieve our Pokemon ID -1, and then from here we add the Pokemon HTML. Same thing as the other function. And it's going to take in the Pokemon name. It also needs the Pokemon ID, as well as and then we're going to create the type labels for it. Pokemon.type. And lastly, the Pokemon base. Perfect. Pretty straightforward? Yeah. What's your name? Nasri? Did you already sign up on our course and everything? Did you get our emails?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. Oh. We hope so, yeah. We're trying to teach this quarter so that next quarter we can have some students are learning it now. We're going to offer them the opportunity to teach it. Because I most likely won't be teaching it because it's very demanding and time consuming, but I will be more than happy to do it again because I like it. You can definitely catch up if you've been getting my emails and oh, you haven't done anything? I'm pretty sure if you really put in the work, by this weekend you can definitely finish some of the projects that we've already established. But you have access to this, right? Okay. It should be on your email, but I'll add you later on just in case. Yeah, we finished. Yeah. Alright, so you guys got it to work before we close up? Cool. Because we got to start unpacking. I'm gonna